The revenue by 1980 was already 2.5 billion. So Siebe had a good idea. Control F. Siebe. Am I spelling that wrong? Hang on. Singer. Merit Singer. That's it. Right, so Control F. Siebe. Who became Singer's financier and partner. However, not long after the machine was built, the boiler blew up at the shop. Siebe persuaded Singer to make a new start in Boston, the centre of the printing trade, and Singer went there to display his invention, which never worked. It was a wood-cutting machine, but he went on to obviously make the sewing machine. So I guess Siebe could be German, but I'm guessing it's a Jew. So not infrequently they were obliged to provide their own needles. The ordeal was even more intense for women, for they were paid less than men for the equivalent work. And yet, well, they too were charged for their equipment, the clothes lockers, the very chairs, and were fined for even the briefest tardiness for damage to a garment. At a Triangle Shirtwaist Company, women were obliged to leave the plant to reach outside toilets as a precaution against the interruption of work. The steel door leading outside to the facilities was locked. Employees required the foreman's permission to have it opened. By the early 1900s, as it happened, many of these women were recent Bundists. The Bund was General Jewish Workers' Union in Russia and Poland. Indeed, in Russia they made up a third of the Bund's membership. Like their male counterparts, they did not abandon their militants in the United States. These are militant Jews. Nor was their activism limited to the workplace. It encompassed also the women's suffrage movement. In New York, Jewish women garment workers represented the very core of the National American Women's Suffrage Association. One of those workers, Rose Schneiderman, was a leader of the city's women's suffrage party. The Polish-born Schneiderman had been brought to the United States as a youngster. After 4 years of schooling, she'd gone to work in a cap factory to support her widowed mother and younger brothers and sisters. Eventually she doubled as an ILGWU organizer and as an officer of the New York branch of Women's Trade Union League. A fiery redhead, Schneiderman proved so captivating a speaker in behalf of workers and women's rights that many years later, in the 30s, she became secretary of the New York State Department of Labor. Meanwhile, within the trade union movement, other women played decisive roles. Fanny Cohen, a veteran of the Bund and the ILGWU's only woman vice president, Bessie Abramovitz, a spunky 20-year-old in 1910 when she helped organize the Chicago strike of 33,000 men's clothing workers. Pauline Newman, the first women's organizer of the historic shirtwaist industry strike. They were a remarkable breed. They were also the pioneers of the garment industry's Great Revolt of 1909 to 1914. In the shirtwaist factories, Jewish women made up 70% of the labour force. Characteristically, they focused their hopes less on improved working conditions than on marriage and escape from the factory altogether. Yet it was precisely these docile females who became a disciplined army in the labour uprising. Oh well, what a surprise. The largest of the shirtwaist factories belonged to the Triangle and Laserson companies, both German-Jewish. Earlier attempts to unionize the two firms had failed. Then in September 1909, workers at the Triangle plant voted to bypass the company-sponsored Benevolent Association in favour of the United Hebrew Trades, the consciousness-raising organisers of the Jewish-staffed industry. Hereupon Triangle's management fired the troublemakers and advertised for replacements. In turn, Local 25 of the LGWU called for a strike. The factory employed nearly 1,000 workers. All responded to the strike appeal. They soon paid a bitter price as the young women marched on the picket line. They were taunted, threatened, jostled by company goons, again all contrived. Others were arrested, ostensibly for malingering, vagrancy, incitement. 5 weeks of this pressure of hunger and physical weakness took their toll. The women's morale flagged. In November, this is Jews against Jews. Remember, Jews owned the factory and Jews work in the factory. The whole thing's just Jewier than Jew soup. In November, the ILGWU leadership convened an emergency meeting of shirtwaist workers. 3,000 women crowded into the Cooper Union Auditorium. There they were addressed by Lower East Side's working class heroes Maya London, Morris Hillquit, Joseph Barondess, Samuel Gompers. All appealed for a labour unity, for financial and moral support, yet the mood remained uncertain. And this is in the run into the Federal Reserve Act, by the way. The likes of Paul Schiff funding, is it Paul or Jacob Schiff funding the Russian Revolution. These are active. Claire Lemlich rose to speak, and in impassioned Yiddish, the young woman described the pain and humiliation of factory labour. Yell at the girls and call them down, even worse than I imagined the Negro slaves were in the South. There are no dressing rooms for the girls in the shops, no place to hang a hat where it will not be spoiled by the end of the day. We are human, all of us girls, and we're young. We like new hats as well as other young women. Why shouldn't we? And if one of us gets a new one, even if it hasn't cost more than 50 cents, that means we have gone for weeks on 2 cents lunches, dry cake and nothing else. Continuing in this vein, working herself into a fury of denunciation, Clara Lemlich then appealed for united action against not only the Triangle Company, but all shirtwaist manufacturers. Her speech brought the crowd to its feet. In an industry with some 32,000 workers and 600 shops, over 20,000 shirtwaist workers, all women, joined the Triangle strikers in a citywide walkout. The outpouring stunned the employers. In consternation, they mobilised every weapon in their arsenal. As always, the police could be depended upon. In the first month of the